I'm Ronit, and I'm a musicologist, and I research contemporary music. And I came here for the meeting of the American Musicological Society. Very excited to know that we have here the new music festival at the University of Louisville, and that was a wonderful opportunity to have a talk with you. Kaija Saariaho, one of the greatest composers in the world today, and started working at IRCAM 30 years ago. Right now, international career, not affiliated with the university, right? But you do come. You're this semester. You're at Berkeley, right?
It's very unusual. It's true. I'm block lecturer at the Berkeley UC University.
And if we would like to start with your background, what fascinates me about your background is the exile identity, Finnish and French composer, in a way. How would you define yourself? Finnish composer living in France, French composer, how do you see yourself?
I feel myself very Finnish. That's where I spent my childhood and young youth years, and I speak daily Finnish, among other languages. So I'm still very close to that culture, but of course after 30 years in Paris, that culture has also influenced me a lot. But so I still imagine myself as a Finn living in Paris.
I love that, imagine myself, because you do know that, I mean, it's very, I'm exiled too. I mean, I'm an Israeli living in Fairfax, Virginia, actually, the Washington area. And of course, I read Hebrew all the time, and I speak Hebrew, and I write in Hebrew. But, you know, when you had the composer seminar, you were talking about, yeah, I'm very Finnish, but when I went 1 year to Finland, after many years in Paris, it felt different, right?
Sure, of course. I think the environment where you are living, it always affects you very much.
Much more than you feel, maybe.
Maybe so. Yeah, much more you understand yourself. Yes.
Yeah, much more than that. Would you like to talk a little bit about your childhood in Paris, and then the transition to Paris, and the cultural transition?
Well, I went to continue my studies after my music studies in Finland.
With Heininen?
With Paavo Heininen, yes. I continued composition studies in Germany. And then with Brian Fernyhough and Klaus Huber, and then wanted to study composition with computers. So I applied for a course at IRCAM next to Centre Pompidou, and that's where, when I then moved to Paris without thinking of it. In fact, in my mind, I never left Finland. I was just going to study first in Germany and then France, and then what happened.
Yeah, and you live in Paris now.
I live in Paris now for a long time.
I would like to maybe talk about I think the most important theme about your music is the stylistic development, the style that you sort of carved to yourself, because you started from that angle of avant-garde and atonality, and studying with Heininen first, and then Fernyhough with the new complexity. And from that, in Paris, you actually maybe got fascinated by the music of Murail and Grisey, and went towards the area of spectralism, and studying the sounds, and studying the tones, and analyzing tones, and actually creating out of the avant-garde and atonality, creating actually beautiful music. Beauty is important in your style. So would you like to?
Well, I think it can be described as you describe it, but that's not, of course, how I feel about it, because since my first compositions, I have my ideas, and I don't think they change so much. But during the studies, of course, studying composition is very complex, and you need to establish and learn a lot of technique. And me coming from not a musical family, I had a lot to do to get myself trained. And it's true that when I was studying, it was a serial period, and my teachers were writing at that time serial music, which was good
Total
for
serialism? You talk about?
quite a lot, yeah. Even if, of course, everybody have their own rules, then to break their own ruls. So anyway, I think it was very good for me. It was good.
What were your rules then?
My rules
At the time?
were at that time. I mean, I was building my own rules, and that's how it is when you study. You suck as much as possible the knowledge coming from your teachers, from the past music, from the recent music. I analyzed very much different music and listened music and scores. Oh, very much. Berio, Ligeti, Shostakovich, Zimmermann, Xenakis, little bit Boulez. The list is very, very long. And
so these are very different directions. If you talk about Berio and Ligeti on the one side and Shostakovich, it's totally different directions.
Of course, but you need to know everything.
Yeah.
You need to know as much as possible. I'm the continuation of the Western music history. I need to know of my history as much as possible. So I think my style and my language, they were growing little by little. Already in Freiburg, I understood that this is not what I want. I need to have...
you know, the direction of Saariaho and
yes,
complexity.
yes.
You did not, you figured
No,
that no.
of course, because I always wanted to work with ears. And
Not organ music. Right?
yeah, well, not... I never, even when I was studying, I never wrote music for my colleagues to read on the paper. I had always it sonically in my mind, and I heard in 80 maybe, before I moved to Paris, I heard the music of l'Itinéraire ensemble, which was then Gérard Griset, Tristan Murail, and some others. And I was very struck that today it's very difficult to understand how refreshing it was, because it was really something different than what we had heard in Germany, for example, that time. And
so once you heard it, it was striking, the difference.
It was striking, and it gave me confidence on what I had been planning. I did not follow Spectralistic school, but I became good friends, especially with Gérard Griset, and
you devoted to him a movement in.
Of course, when he died suddenly, yes, yeah.
You felt as if you are a continuation of Western music.
Well, I am. It's not a question of my feelings. I think.
So which threads, you know, there are.
I don't care about those threats, because it's not my business to put myself in a box. My business is to get out of the box. That's why I left Finland already. I don't want to be classified to be a post-spectralist or spectralist. I'm not spectralist. I have a lot of ideas, and parts of my compositional technique comes from serial techniques. So of course, everything I've learned, I've digested, and the result of that is my music. So what you say, stylistic development, I could not care less. I mean, I'm just trying to express myself in my music, and my music is developing at the same time when I'm developing myself. When I get more mature as a composer, you advance in your composition only when composing. That's the only way. It's so complex activity that so that's why I'm frustrated even to speak about it. It doesn't take us anywhere. But okay, we can continue this discussion.
So when you think about the next step, the new piece, I mean, I'm talking about, let's say, the differences or the development, your own internal development compositionally from Nymphea to L'amour de loin. How do you see that? How did you change in terms of composition? The material took you somewhere else, right?
I don't believe that thing at all. I mean, material takes me nowhere. I'm the one who is creating the material,
Of course.
and I'm the one who is dealing with that.
Yes.
So what happened is that I composed more music. I composed also pieces where there are clearly soloistic instruments or voices, and that kind of form then invites for different kind of treatment of the orchestra and soloist, for example. If you want soloists to be heard, well, I want them to be heard. As I said, the sonic result is my only important aim in my music.
And the sonic result of your music has transformed over the years. You have one sonic result in Nymphea in earlier pieces. You have another sonic result in L'amour de loin and La Passion de Simone, and even Five Reflects that was performed yesterday. How can you talk about these differences? How do you plan these differences?
Well, you know, I'm not the same woman I was in 80s. So through writing, you never want to write same piece twice. At least I don't want. So when you get something accomplished, you want to put your radar to another aspect of music. So I wanted to in 80s and 90s, I was really interested how to create certain kind of timbral textures. And when I went more to solo writings, I needed to work with the aspect of melody. Also, when writing for the big halls without electronics, you need to think how you project your music, and I'm thinking of that also. So that made me create different kind of musical textures. L'amour de loin is my first opera, and I feel that everything what I had written until then, is somehow synthesized in that piece. I needed, it was enormous effort for me. I wrote it only for 1.5 years, but I prepared it for 8 years. So
8 years ahead of time.
Yes,
Before the time that
of
you
course,
actually wrote it.
of course.
In terms of the collaboration with Amin Maalouf
no,
and
in
yourself?
well that also, but in terms of what opera would be for me.
And that was a transformation, because in the 80s you were cited as if, oh, I'm never going to write an opera. And then when you heard Messiaen's opera, you said, well, I can, this is what you've been cited. I can write something like that. I mean, It really
I've been cited. That's why I want to.
Yeah.
That's why I want to check what you write because.
Of course. Of course. So that's from.
Yes.
Okay.
Well. Okay. In the beginning of 80s, I was asked when I write my opera, and I said I will not write an opera.
Okay.
And then I moved to Paris, and I saw many fantastic opera productions, and I realized that I need to redefine my idea of opera. That it's not that dusty place where the overweight singers are exposing their high notes for and people pay expensive tickets, that it can be something different. It can be very profound and spiritual art form, completely contrasting. And little by little I did redefine my idea of opera, and it can be a fantastic meeting place for different arts. And seeing Messiaen's opera first in Paris in a staging, which was not a staging, which was just tableaus, I told myself, well, if Messiaen, whose music can be so dramatic, if he is not able to write an opera but just an oratorio, how could I, with my music, which is much less dramatic, to create some? And then I saw exactly the same music staged by Peter Sellars in Salzburg.
And so you saw Messiaen's opera at once?
Yes, and then when I saw it in Salzburg, I realized it's opera now. So it depends on the staging. So I felt liberated because of that.
And that was the point that you said, well, I'm going to write an opera. And then I hear, you know, it's always been, again, written that you were inspired by Messiaen, but I hear a lot of resonances of Pelléas and Mélisande by Debussy from this opera.
Well, I don't hear them, but if you hear them, they must be there. They are both in French language, of course. So, yeah.
So the writing to French language sort of directs composer to one direction, maybe.
I don't think so, but if you think so, maybe there is something. I was not influenced by Messiaen's opera musically.
Okay.
I was influenced.
Or Debussy.
No, well, Debussy is something different. Messiaen, it was this fact of realizing that this music can be staged, even if I felt that it was too much concert music when I saw the first production.
And you say Debussy is different. What is different about Debussy? Debussy and Ravel, you were talking in the composers' workshop, you were talking about their influence.
Well, of course, I admire them a lot. I admire Debussy because of his very unusual harmonic language. He's one of those composers whom you recognize right away. And I think harmony is really important tool for a composer and to create the identity for one's music.
And maybe this is one of the reasons when people write about your music, they write about your own unique harmonic language. And you worked on developing your own unique harmonic language through a lot of analysis of the sound, working with electronic music and doing sound analysis, right?
Well, yes, I did analyze a lot of sounds, but not specifically to find my harmonic language, because I am very interested in sound, and I wanted to know more about it, really the physical and acoustic parameters in order to re-synthesize sounds then in my electronic music, but also for my orchestration.
So you could say that your analysis and work with electronic music actually impacted your writing for a conventional orchestra, right?
Maybe it did, yes. Yeah. Well, all the knowledge I gained, that influenced my instrumental writing.
And at the time, I don't know how to broach the idea of gender. At the time, when you're analyzing notes and writing electronic music, you are the only women, right, at IRCAM?
Yes, I was the only woman, and also when I studied composition, I was the only woman. And
you really had to insist that Heininen will accept you as a student, right?
Yes, I had to, but it was not because I was a girl. I think it was because his class was full.
Oh.
And he, on the contrary, always encouraged me. There were many professors, more exactly two, who refused to teach me because I was a girl, because they felt that they are wasting their time because soon I'm a pretty girl getting soon married, and you know, they had more important things to do. But so that was very typical that time, and it didn't surprise anybody. Of course, it did hurt me, but it didn't surprise me.
Yeah. So you had to go through many hurdles and many stumbling stones just because of gender. I mean, having to study, getting this nasty review that you talked about the other day at the Composers Forum. Would you like to talk about the problems with actually being a woman composer?
Well, the problem is that I cannot compare myself how it is to be a young male composer, because I think all composers in the beginning have a lot of problems. It's very, very difficult. So I think I had a lot of extra problems because I was a girl, and also
like what kind? Can you tell about the problem?
Well, people did not take me seriously, and they just could not. But it's not even their fault. It was how the society was at that time. When I went to the first radio recording of my piece for cello and piano, when I came to the Im Traume, when I went to the studio, the pianist, very nice lady, famous pianist, she said, "Oh, here comes the page turner," because they just could not, you know, they had not met me before. I was a young composer, or I did call to my favorite cellist. I really was so happy. It was my first commission from the Finnish radio. So
what's the name of the cellist?
I don't tell it to you.
Okay.
I called him and asked if he would like to make the recording for the Finnish radio. And he found it so funny that a girl would call him up and ask him to play her music, that he was just laughing. He was just laughing. He was so surprised, so that finally he never played my music. So I already then realized that it's not completely their fault. It's the cultural situation. And that has evolved a lot. And yet, of course, we all know that there is no equality between.
No, not just yet. But there was a core problem, even much more than all of these nasty reactions from performers and from even music critics. You were telling about someone who said, well, had she not been a woman, maybe we wouldn't perform her. But beyond all of that, women composers didn't have role models, didn't have other women composers to look at their scores and to say, this is how I can write my music.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Would you like to talk?
I don't know. I had other role models, writers.
Yeah.
I don't know. I cannot judge that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe to conclude our interview, I would like just to mention that one of the most important textbooks in America is the book written by Richard Ruskin and Christopher Gibbs. And the last composer in that group is you, Kaija Saariaho. And actually starting from medieval music and ending, the last pages of that book is about your music and about your opera, L'amour de loin. Would you like to say a few more words about how do you feel about a composer who actually, a woman composer who concludes Western history in that textbook?
Well, I'm of course very happy of all the attention my music is getting, and all the affection that the performers and audience have for that, and that gives me a lot of strength, and that can never be the main thing for a composer, but of course it makes me very happy.
And what are you looking forward? What is going to be? Can you tell us a few words about your next composition, your plan? Other than actually the most important, looking forward the performance at the Metropolitan Opera next year of L'amour de loin. I think first ever that they perform a woman composer, an opera by a woman composer.
I'm very much looking for that. It's very beautiful production, and about the future we'll speak in future interviews.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Kaija Saariaho.